Have you ever wondered how Disneyland was created? Well, today's episode is especially for you. Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your guided tour through the worlds of Disney and Imagineering. I'm your host, Matthew Kroll, and it's my job to explore the stories and places we love and the people who bring them to life. Today's episode is a special one because we're going to explore the story of the origins of Disneyland by interviewing Leslie Iwerks, who just created a brand new film called Disneyland Handcrafted, available on January 22nd on Disney Plus and Disney YouTube. The story of the origin of Disneyland is an incredible one, and Leslie has created something that is perfect for any Disney fan or anyone who's looking to be inspired by the story of the happiest place on Earth. As you fasten your seatbelt, I encourage you to take out your mobile devices and search for Imagination Skyway on your favorite social media app. And better yet, if you don't already, be sure to subscribe on Patreon by heading to patreon.com/Imagination Skyway for bonus episodes and even more content that you can enjoy. And when you're ready to plan your next trip to any Disney destination, reach out to our travel partners at KMV Travel by heading to kmvtravel.com/Skyway. As we begin our journey, please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your journey aboard Imagination Skyway. Leslie, thank you so much for joining me here at the Walt Disney Studios lot. It's incredible to get the chance to chat with you. I know we have Disneyland Handcrafted releasing in just a few weeks. I'm really excited to see it. You covered Disneyland in the first episode of the Imagineering story. So what compelled you to dive deeper into the subject?
Well, because when we were making the Imagineering story, we found all this footage that I had never seen before, many people had never seen before. I don't think the world's really seen. And a lot of details in the making of the park. And so we could never put all that in episode 1 of Imagineering story. So my editor and my producer, Mark, just were thinking, well, wouldn't that be cool if we put it together in kind of a verite way, you know, like just let it sit with you and let you be immersed in it, and not try to cut away to talking heads and stuff like that or photographs, but stay in the real footage that was shot by this cameraman, numerous cameramen, but Stuart Jewell was the one that was highlighted on the TV shows by Walt. And he did a lot of the time-lapse stuff, and so they used a variety of film techniques, which I was intrigued by. It was observational photography, it was aerial photography, it was time-lapse, it was behind the scenes, and they also did gag footage. And so when you look at all these different ways in which they filmed the park in that year, it's like, God, it's screaming for somebody to put it together in a way that these cameramen intended for it to be, I think.
Yeah, this is a subject that I think they knew at the time was groundbreaking. It's a first of its kind theme park. When it comes to the development of Disneyland, what did you find made for it to be so interesting or compelling or different from any other theme park?
Well, first of all, it was the high quality, the detail that Walt went into, and he got heavily criticized for going into this level of detail and craftsmanship. The hand craftsmanship that went into Disneyland was really unprecedented. So many of the other amusement parks, they weren't theme parks. There's a big difference between an amusement park and a theme park. And he created the first theme park, which is all themed around stories and around characters and around IP and branding, but really it was a story-driven experience. With each land you went into, there was a story, there was a beginning, middle, and end. There were rides to go on that had their own stories. Even the construction of the park, the evolution of the pavement had its own story, and how it unveiled into one land to the other and dovetailed. And there was so much detail that went into it that people thought Walt was absolutely crazy. You know, they thought he was out of his mind, including his brother. Yeah. And, why are you going to this level of detail? But Walt persevered and said, this is what's going to make it different. This is what's going to make it timeless. And that's what happened. And he crafted this by driving, home this idea that it has to be clean, it has to be well designed, it has to be beautiful, it has to be, detailed. And he could have bought off the shelf anything off the shelf, you know.
Yeah.
Instead, they developed their own ride systems. They built, you know, as you see, the whole film was called Disneyland Handcrafted because of the fact that they really did handcraft this whole piece together. And I think the takeaway that I got when I was watching the footage was that was the first word that came to my mind was handcrafted. You know, whether it be the bricks or the, you know, the stones on the wall, on the castle walls, to, you know, the details in the statues, to the facades, to the murals. I mean, it's endless, the amount of artistry that went into this park at a time when, you know, they didn't have to do that. Like, there could have been a lot cheaper way to build this park, and it probably would have been more prudent.
Yeah.
But, you know, Walt always felt that if you build something that's of high quality and class, people will come and they will rise up to that, and they will enjoy that. They will feel elevated as a result of the experience.
I think the handcrafted nature is what makes it such an incredible theme park to this day, and it applies to every other park around the world. So I could see how you could gravitate to that. Now, I know you went through, I believe it's over 100 hours of footage for this production. How did it feel to be looking at this original work that from decades ago?
Well, you know, I would say that there's some of this footage already existing out there in the world on the internet and stuff, but what we discovered within that were a lot of detail and a lot of people shots, people working, and gag reels and things like that I had never seen before. And I think to me that was what made it really special, was to find this, you know, that it was unique. And the other thing that I think about is that these filmmakers, these cameramen that were actually shooting it, they were very creative. These guys, you know, came from the film industry. They had already made movies. Stuart Jewell had worked on The Living Desert in the True Life Adventure films, documentary, and he would spend 4 hours trying to get a shot, you know, of some random rodent or something, you know. And so here he is in Disneyland filming a dirt lot, filming a park coming to fruition out of the ground. And who better to film that than one of the filmmakers from the True Life Adventures? And he was a, you know, pretty well-known photographer, filmmaker in his own right as time went on. But I'm just fascinated by him as a subject, and just wish there were interviews with him that we can track down. But I felt like, as a documentary filmmaker myself, I was in such awe and appreciation of the shots that he got, and the footage that he got, that I just wanted, my challenge on me was for us to cut it together in a way that would make him proud, you know, that he would appreciate it, because he shot all these shots and assumed somebody someday would edit them together, but they've been sitting on a shelf all these years.
How did you organize everything? What was your process like to turn it into a story or a film? Because I imagine there's just so much to look through.
Well, so our editor Mo, we got all these reels transferred from the film archives, and then a lot of them came through and they were work prints that were, you know, digitized from the original film, and a lot of them were like shots, random shots. Shot of the, you know, a dirt lot in 1954. Next shot is, you know, the making of the Dumbo ride, almost leading up to opening day. You know what I mean, or whatever it would be. And we were like, okay, well, there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. It's almost like they were, you know, they created a new work print from what was on the cutting room floor. And so we had to cut those up and then organize each shot by location and by time. And so it was like forensics trying to put all that together. And oftentimes we'd think we had the right shot at the right time, and then we're like, oh, the castle in the background, you know, it's got its top on already, or, you know, it's got the finial on it, and we can't use it. So, you know, we have to go back and find another exterior shot that would fit that time frame. So it was fascinating to just kind of go be immersed in where it was and figure it out. And I think for an editor, that's a really fun project.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of forensics involved to figure that out. Now, this is a subject that I think is also personal to you. I think a lot of Disney fans know your father, Don Iwerks, and your grandfather, Ub Iwerks. Ub was Walt's partner, had a tremendous impact, both of them, not only at Disney, but within filmmaking. So how personal was this project for you when it came to both of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's all personal to me. I feel like Disney's in my DNA. I grew up going to this lot as a kid and walking around the back lot when my dad was working in the machine shop, and he would just let me loose and I would run around and, get into trouble. But yeah, I think that, it's fun for me as a filmmaker to find this kind of material that hasn't been done before. And again, I just feel more honored than anything to do something with the footage that was sitting there by these cameramen, but to sit here in Legends Plaza and think about what Walt and my grandfather did together, from Kansas City to Hollywood, to the co-creation of Mickey Mouse, to all the achievements that they did together beyond that, with my grandfather, with the Circorama camera that he and my dad worked on together in 8 months. My grandfather had to design a 360 camera system, and the projection system, and the theater, and they had to go out and film it
I didn't
across
realize
the country.
The time was that short.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And so I hear, stories from my dad, who's now 96, telling me about being out in the middle of, America in the wheat fields filming this 360 shot. And he told me he had hay fever and he's out in the middle of the wheat fields and he, and it was torture, But, there was just so many moments. Those two men, father, son, were such innovators in the technology side of things, projection and camera systems. And it's neat to think that they had a hand in making Tomorrowland something really unique, because that was the last land to be built in record time. I mean, the whole thing was record, but Tomorrowland was, like, as they say, it was their big bugaboo. They couldn't figure out what it was going to look like, what it was going to be. How do you make something timeless when it's tomorrow? Like, yeah. Tomorrow is tomorrow, but then it's yesterday. You know what I mean? So that was a tricky one. It's always been a tricky land, I think, for a lot of the Imagineers over time, to always have enough forward-looking imagery and experiences so it doesn't date itself. But that 360 system was very innovative for that time, and so they were able to put something really cool in Tomorrowland that no one had really ever seen before, since they first invented the sort of 360 rig in the 1900s. No one's really done it since, and so that was a neat experience.
That's a cool story. I didn't realize the short time frame for that. Did the did the footage teach you anything new about Walt, or a side of him that maybe you hadn't seen before?
Yeah, good question. I think that what I learned from this footage and from the sound bites, more importantly, was how much Walt risked his own financial livelihood and also his reputation to build this against all great odds. The odds, Disneyland should never have been made, honestly. It should never have even happened. Like, how did it happen is the story of this. It's the audacity to create happiness and how much hard work it took for them to do that. And I guess I learned that he was willing to put up his own money time and again to risk it all. And it was that level of giving, in that belief that he had that this was worth fighting for, that this place that he dubbed the happiest place on earth, or whoever dubbed it thereafter, was something that would be unique on the planet. And I'm always fascinated too by that idea, like, who calls it the happiest place on earth? Like, that's a big brand promise.
It is.
In the entire globe.
Yeah.
This one spot in Anaheim on this one plot of land is the happiest place on earth. And the fact that it has grown to 12 theme parks, and they got 900 million guests since opening day. There's so many Disney fans around the world, and I just feel like, I guess the message of this whole story is that Disneyland wasn't inevitable, it wasn't a given. It was, the magic of Disneyland came from the mind of Walt prior to opening. And that magic was his imagination, and that he willed it on this plot of land and got everybody around him to galvanize and create at the highest level in every single way, whether they were an engineer, a story person, an artist, craftsman, what have you, they were all working at the highest level. And that to me is what I learned from the footage, just what it took.
Yeah, it's that level of handcrafting. I know you said there were gags in here, there were things that you haven't seen before. Were there any stories that you learned that you had never heard before about Disneyland?
I mean, yeah, a lot. A lot. Like, just how the story that Disneyland wasn't baked in at the beginning. It was not it's locked like a movie script would be, where you film a movie script and it's locked. They said they had like 10% of the project even developed when they started.
Wow.
I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And and I think just the fact that the odds against Walt, the fact that people doubted him all the way through, and he had to overcome that doubt. He knew people, whether they be bankers or they be even city planners or they be his own staff, doubted him, and he just had to keep going. And what I think is cool is also the fact that this property, this studio lot, was a beehive at that time. Not only were they making Disneyland, they were making movies, they were making TV shows, they were making animated films. They were already over their heads busy, and then they decided to build a theme park and then task everybody to work, double time to, okay, you're doing an animated film, but you're going to also come over here and, paint the backdrop of Snow White or whatever. And
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the fact that it was a very exciting time, and my dad's spoken a lot about just what a great moment in time it was to be on the lot when Walt was alive. And my dad started on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a camera technician, so he saw the magic of that, and then worked through the company in so many different iterations with all his inventions. And I don't know, I just think that there's a DNA on this lot in that park that is about innovation that has permeated everything. And I think just sitting in that footage was pure, it just felt pure, and it felt like this was the origin story. And it was moving, it was really moving.
Yeah, I can only imagine, and I can't wait to see it. A couple of final questions here. I think we've tapped into this piece a little bit, but you even mentioned yourself that Disneyland should have never happened, and yet over 70 years later, not only is it still here, but it's one of the top visited destinations, for theme parks at least, in the world. So what is it about the DNA of Disneyland that keeps it as relevant and as popular as it is today, probably more so than it even was when it opens?
So Walt has a quote in the film. He tells his artists that if there's one thing that I want you to do that's more important to me than anything that you'll do as a designer, is that these people leave here today with a smile on their face. That's all he cared about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's like, that's emotional. How many CEOs say that's all I care about? I want a smile on their face when they leave. And to me, that is the Disney brand. He knew that already through his animated films and what those achieved. And I think Walt inside was a child. He was a happy child, and he was born in this early, Midwest upbringing where things were simple, but yet full of imagination. And everything was burgeoning. The animation industry had not really developed at all yet. He was a pioneer in that. He was paving the path, he and my grandfather, and Roy, and to think back on what they did at a time when everything hadn't been done before. It was a very exciting time, and those are the stories that I hear from my dad of just constant innovation. I was just talking to him last night, and that he was saying, yeah, we were always inventing something new, and that's the spirit of Walt Disney, was always to invent something new. Don't rest on our laurels. Like, just keep bringing happiness in the world somewhere, somehow, and making things different. And he left a legacy that I think will be here forever, as long as this planet's here. I think it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think a lot of Disney fans can relate to that as well.
How many other people pilgrimage to a place time and again, generation after generation, sometimes week after week, to go experience it?
There's few places in the world that
I don't know any other
that.
place that somebody would go every weekend, or
Yeah.
or at least once or twice a year. I mean, maybe church, but
that would be the closest comparison, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah. Now, I actually had to throw one other question in there, because you brought up Roy, and I almost forgot that, of course, he's such an important part of this story. How much Roy did you see or put into this Disneyland Handcrafted documentary?
Well, believe it or not, we had a hard time finding any quotes from Roy. He really didn't do interviews.
He stayed behind the scenes for a lot of his career.
He did, and it's very frustrating, because I would love to do a documentary just on Roy Disney, but because I think he is so deserving of it, big time. But there's very little interviews of him, and I think that he and his brother had challenges, public feuds, where they didn't speak for years, because of all this. I don't know the details of those feuds, but when Walt was so determined to build Disneyland, and he started his own company, WED, and hired his own people to do that, and he wasn't going to put this studio at risk, and he even leveraged his own money, sold his house, and mortgages, leverages life insurance, and ultimately that impressed Roy, I think, enough to say, okay, he's literally crazy. Like, he's gonna do this whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
So I've got to go along with it, And it's fun to hear people speak about that, and speak about Walt's, how he felt Walt treated money, and debt, versus, and then Roy, being the financial genius that he was, being able to ultimately make it all happen.
Yeah.
But talk about a perfect brother partnership. I'm sure it was not perfect all the way through all the time, like any family, but the fact that they could do what they did together, one visionary and one genius financial person, to make it happen, they were very lucky.
Yeah, an incredible partnership. Now, I was going to close originally by asking what you want people to take away when they view this, but you answered that earlier, so I have a backup question for you, which is, we're down the road from Disneyland, so to speak. What does your perfect day at Disneyland look like?
My perfect day at Disneyland is going straight to get a Dole Whip.
Great answer. Any day that involves a Dole Whip is a good one. Well, Leslie, I'll be sure, of course, that to promote Disneyland Handcrafted, I know everyone's got to go and see it. I'm excited to see it.
Cool.
And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to Imagination Central. Before you exit this episode, be sure to follow Imagination Skyway on social media and share the show with anyone who might enjoy listening to our program. Remember, for ad-free episodes and bonus content, you can create a free account or sign up for a premium subscription at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. And if you're ready to book a trip to Disneyland or any other Disney destination, be sure to reach out to our travel partners at KMV Travel by heading to kmvtravel.com/Skyway. Thank you so much for riding aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, as always, if we can dream it, we can do it.